How do you move a stone weighing the same as 60 elephants without a wheel, without a crane, and without making a sound? Welcome to the mystery of Solomon's Temple. The impossible temple: blood, stone, and silence. Part 1. The anomaly of the ancient world. If you were to stand on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem 3,000 years ago, you would be looking at a structure that, by all logical metrics of the time, should not have existed. We are not talking about a simple place of worship. We are talking about an architectural anomaly that pushed the boundaries of physics, economics, and human endurance to their absolute breaking point. Consider the sheer scale of the ambition. The structure rose 30 meters into the air. That is the height of a modern 10-story building, constructed entirely without the use of reinforced concrete or steel beams. Inside, it was a blinding paradox of opulence. The walls were not merely painted gold, they were encased in it. 27 tons of pure gold lined the interior. In today's market, the bullion alone would be worth over $1.5 billion, but in the ancient world, this concentration of wealth was simply incalculable. But the gold, as mesmerizing as it was, is not the true mystery here. The gold is just the decoration. The true, impossible reality of Solomon's temple lies in its foundation. Deep beneath the surface, archaeologists have identified massive limestone ashlars, stones cut with laser-like precision, weighing up to 400 tons apiece. Let that number sink in. 400 tons. That is the equivalent weight of 60 adult elephants combined. It is the weight of 2 fully loaded Boeing 747 jumbo jets. Today, lifting a load of that magnitude requires the world's most advanced hydraulic cranes, stabilizing computers, and steel cables. Yet King Solomon's engineers achieved this in an era before the invention of the engine, before the pulley was perfected, and without a single drop of gasoline. How did they do it? How do you quarry, transport, and lift a monolithic stone the size of a house without modern machinery? And perhaps more hauntingly, how did they achieve this massive industrial feat in absolute, terrified silence? This is the forensic story of the most expensive, dangerous, and mysterious construction project in human history. Part 2. The surgical strike on the mountain. The nightmare began in the mountains surrounding Jerusalem. The mandate from King Solomon was specific and unyielding. 1 Kings chapter 5, verse 17 records the order: great stones, costly stones, and hewed stones. He didn't want rubble, he wanted perfection. But there was a catch, a divine rule that turned a difficult engineering problem into an impossible one. The law stated that no tool of iron could be heard at the temple site. No hammers banging, no chisels chipping, no saws grinding. This meant that every single stone, from the smallest paving block to the 400-ton giants, had to be quarried and finished to perfection miles away from the construction site. Imagine the pressure on the 80,000 stone cutters assigned to this task. If they made a mistake of just a few millimeters at the quarry, the stone would be hauled all the way to Jerusalem only to be rejected. There were no second chances. There was no trimming it down at the site. So how did they extract these monsters? They couldn't just hack at the rock face with bronze pickaxes. The vibration would shatter the limestone or create microfractures that would fail later. Instead, they used a technique that relied on patience and the raw power of nature. The stonecutters would identify the fault lines in the bedrock. Using drills made of harder stone or early bronze, they would bore a series of deep, narrow holes along the desired cut line. But they didn't drive metal wedges in. Instead, they inserted dry wooden wedges, extremely desiccated wood that was thirsty for moisture. Then they waited. They poured water over the wood and watched. It was a slow, silent process. As the wood cells drank the water, they began to expand. The hydraulic pressure generated by this swelling wood is immense, capable of exerting thousands of pounds of force per square inch. Hours would pass, sometimes days. The rock face would sit in silence until suddenly, crack! A dull, heavy thud would echo through the quarry as the limestone split perfectly along the line, separated by nothing more than the force of expanding wood. It was a brilliant low-tech solution to a high-tech problem, but separating the stone from the earth was only the first step. Now they had to move it.
Part 3. The Physics of Human Endurance. This is where the story shifts from engineering to sheer human grit. How do you move a 400-ton block across kilometers of uneven, rocky terrain? Solomon assembled an army specifically for this purpose. 70,000 men were designated as burden bearers. They weren't craftsmen. They weren't artists. Their sole function was to generate kinetic energy. The method was deceptively simple, but brutally difficult to execute. They constructed massive ramps of compacted earth, smoothing out the valleys and hills to create a consistent gradient. On these ramps, they laid down tracks of timber, thick tree trunks that acted as rollers. The stone was placed on a sled, and then the ropes were attached. These weren't steel cables. They were twisted vegetable fibers, thick as a man's arm. But even the strongest rope has a breaking point. The tension on these lines was mathematical madness. Picture the scene. Hundreds of men harnessed to a single block, arranged in fan-like formations. A supervisor stands on top of the stone, conducting the movement like an orchestra of pain. He shouts a command. 700 men lunge forward simultaneously. Pull, stop, reset. The stone moves 6 inches. Then silence. Then again. Pull, stop, reset. The danger was constant. If the rhythm broke, if one group pulled while another lagged, the stone could twist. If a roller snapped, the sled could tilt. And if a rope failed, if those vegetable fibers finally gave way under the tension of 400 tons, the recoil alone was enough to kill a man instantly. If the stone began to slide backward down a ramp, there was no brake, there was no safety mechanism. It would simply crush everything and everyone in its path until friction finally stopped it. For the Israelites working in shifts, 1 month on, 2 months off, it was a patriotic and religious duty. But for the Canaanite forced laborers, it was a sentence. They lived and died in the shadow of these stones. The mortality rate was a secret kept by the dust of the ramps. Part 4. The International Logistics of Cedar. While the ground shook under the weight of the stones, the horizon was darkened by the movement of timber. A temple needs a roof, and Solomon wanted the best wood the world had to offer, the cedars of Lebanon. These trees were legendary. They were rot-resistant, aromatic, and grew to massive heights, perfect for spanning the wide halls of the temple. But they grew 200 kilometers away in the mountains of a foreign kingdom.
Solomon had to become a diplomat before he could become a builder. He negotiated a massive trade treaty with King Hiram of Tyre. The cost was astronomical: 20,000 cores of wheat and 20,000 baths of olive oil sent to Tyre every single year. We are talking about millions of liters of food, a significant portion of Israel's agricultural output, just to secure the wood. But buying the trees was the easy part. Moving them was a logistical nightmare that makes modern supply chains look simple. 10,000 Israeli lumberjacks were sent north in shifts. They felled the giants in the high altitude of the Lebanese mountains. Then came the journey. They couldn't carry them over the land. The terrain was too treacherous, so they threw them into the sea. They lashed the massive logs together to form gigantic rafts and floated them down the Mediterranean coast, battling storms and currents until they reached the port of Joppa. From Joppa, the real torture began. The elevation climb from the sea level of Joppa to the heights of Jerusalem is over 2,500 feet. They had to drag these soaked, heavy logs uphill for nearly 60 kilometers. Just like the stones, this required human friction, sweat, and an indomitable will. Every beam in that temple represented a journey of hundreds of miles and the labor of thousands of hands.
Part 5. The Rule of Silence and the Master of Gold. As the materials converged on Mount Moriah, the atmosphere changed. The chaotic noise of the quarries and the shouting of the transport teams vanished. At the construction site itself, a supernatural hush fell over the workforce. The command was absolute: no iron tool, no sound of destruction. The temple was to be built in reverence. This required a level of management that is almost incomprehensible. 3,300 supervisors were responsible for ensuring this silence. Think about the coordination required. A block arrives. It must fit perfectly into its neighbor. There is no mortar to hide gaps. There is no hammer to force it in. It has to slide into place like a key into a lock. If it doesn't, the error is traced back miles to the quarry, and someone pays the price. The construction site was a giant 3D puzzle where the pieces weighed hundreds of tons and the margin for error was zero. And then there was the finishing touch, the interior. Solomon hired a foreign expert named Hiram, or Hiram Ebith, to oversee the metallurgy. This man was a genius of his time, capable of working with the two most temperamental materials, bronze and gold. For the bronze work, Hiram created a foundry in the clay ground of the Jordan Valley. He cast the two great pillars, Yakin and Boaz, which stood 8 meters high and weighed 34 tons each. To cast objects of this size in a single pour is a feat that modern foundries would struggle to replicate without flaws. But the interior of the temple was where the wealth became staggering. The walls were lined with cedar, but no wood was visible. It was all covered in gold. The Bible describes the process: "So Solomon overlaid the house within with pure gold." This wasn't a thin leafing. These were plates. Workmen toiled over furnaces that burned day and night, hammering gold until it was pliable, then fixing it to the cedar with golden nails. The heat in these enclosed spaces must have been suffocating. The toxic fumes from the smelting, the relentless heat of the furnaces, and the glare of the liquid metal created an environment that was as dangerous as the quarries. Yet the result was a room, the Holy of Holies, that was a perfect cube of gold. When the lamps were lit, the reflection would have been blinding, a physical representation of inapproachable light. Part 6. The Cloud and the Legacy. 7 years.
7 years of bleeding hands, broken backs, and silent precision. 7 years of an economy entirely focused on one coordinate on the map. And then it was done. The year was roughly 957 BC. The last stone was set. The last gold plate was polished. The final curtain was hung. The structure stood completed, a testament to 150,000 men who gave years of their lives to build a house for a God they could not see. The dedication ceremony was the culmination of this national effort. King Solomon stood before the altar. Thousands of sheep and oxen were sacrificed. The priests picked up the Ark of the Covenant, the ancient wooden chest containing the 10 Commandments, and carried it into the Holy of Holies. And then, the historical record describes a phenomenon that defies engineering. It wasn't the gold that made the temple special. It wasn't the massive stones. It was what happened next. And it came to pass, when the priests were come out of the holy place, that the cloud filled the house of the Lord. The glory of God, the Shekinah, descended with such physical density and power that the priests were forced to stop their service. They physically could not stand. The silence of the construction was replaced by the weight of a presence that terrified and awed the nation. For the workers standing outside, the stone cutters from the mountains, the lumberjacks from Lebanon, the bronze casters from the valley, this was the payoff. They had built the impossible. They had moved the immovable. Today, Solomon's temple is gone, destroyed by the Babylonians centuries later. The gold was stripped, the bronze was melted down, and the cedar was burned. But the foundation stones remain. Deep underground, in the tunnels beneath the western wall, you can still see them. You can touch the limestone blocks that weigh 400 tons. They sit there, perfectly joined, silent witnesses to a lost technology and a forgotten workforce. They remind us that with enough faith, organization, and sheer human will, we can build things that echo through eternity. But they also leave us with the lingering question: if they could do this 3,000 years ago with wood and water, what other lost knowledge lies buried in the sands of history, waiting for us to rediscover it? This was the story of the impossible build, the story of Solomon's temple.